Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alexis and today I'm going to be sharing 10 tips for Pangobooks users. So if you are a buyer, if you are a seller, if you are both, these are just some tips that I felt inclined to follow myself and I encourage you to as well, just for easy access. So with that being said, let's get started. But before I share those, I do want to mention that my Pangobook shop is Miss Bookish Butterfly. I will include the link in the description box down below. And if you happen to be a new user to Pangobooks, you can use my discount code, which is Miss Bookish Butterfly, or select this link in the description box down below so you can get $5 off your first purchase. But with that being said, let's hop into those tips. Now, the first tip I have is to create your shop name and your shop username. So as you can see on my Pangobook shop, I have just my first name, Alexis, but my username, I change it to Miss Bookish Butterfly. When you first sign up, it actually generates one for you that would just be default your first name and 6 digits. So although you can still continue to use that generated username, I do advise changing this to something unique and something easy to remember, maybe even something that's related to your other social media accounts. That way it's easier for users to find you and make your shop memorable. My second tip is to create a bio. Now, for myself, I did just make it brief, talking a little bit about how I got back into reading again and leaving it open-ended for people who want to communicate or have further questions about listings. I also included my discount code in my bio. So if you are someone who has an available discount code, I would advise sharing it in your bio so it makes it easier for people who are on your page to find your discount code and they can use it moving forward. If you are also choosing to sell books on Pangobooks, I would advise mentioning the days that you deliver if you only deliver on certain days. So for example, I try to send my books for delivery the next day after purchase. However, some other sellers may decide to only go to the post office on Thursdays, go on Fridays, etc. So do mention that in your bio as well, and you can put it in the description box. Now, this brings me to tip number 3, which is to look at pictures and read the descriptions. I say this because as a buyer, I do try to check the condition. I want to check what type of edition it is, if it's traditionally published or an out of print edition, if it was independently published, if it is a special book box edition. I want to know these things for the type of books that I look into, and I want to be as transparent as possible as well as a seller. So what I try to do is have a picture of course, the front cover, a picture of the spine, as well as a picture of the back cover. And if there are any imperfections, I'll take pictures of those and mention it in my descriptions, because you want to be as transparent as possible in order to, best communicate with your customers or fellow sellers what the book is and how the listing is most accurate as possible. Another tip would be to utilize filters and sorting options. What I appreciate about Pangobooks is the fact that even within the listings, you can search across Pangobooks by genre, you can search by hashtags, you can search by the title of the book, you can search by the name of the author, and within those individual shops, say my shop, which is Miss Bookish Butterfly, I can go to my page and select the filter and go ahead and check what edition it is or what condition it is. If there are particular hashtags like historical romance, I use children's or children's books, juvenile fiction. If I have other related names or titles for books such as Lisa Kleypas, I'll list that as well. And just making it easier for buyers to search in your individual shop and add more to your cart. So I appreciate this a lot, especially as someone who is starting to list a lot of children's books and romance books, which are two completely different age groups. But if someone wanted to, they could search just on my shop page and continue to add on their cart and get more for their buck, which is essentially what happens when you bundle purchases. As a seller, you can utilize the hashtags to specify more or describe your listing more. So, for example, some of my listings, if say it's a romance book, I would mention if it's hardcover or paperback. Usually it's paperback, so I'll do that. Fiction or nonfiction, of course, I'll put fiction. After that, what genre? I'll say romance. And then if there's a subgenre of romance, such as contemporary, historical, or sports, things like that, I'll mention it as well and continue on down the list. I would also include the author's name, the title or series that it comes from, especially if it's popular. It's easy to find that way. And of course, the edition that it is. So if it's a special edition, traditionally published, indie edition, or independently published, out of print, or OOP, I do try to utilize those so it's easier to find. And if someone's looking into those, say a book box edition exclusive, they can look up that way, such as there's Dark and Quirky or the Steamy Lit box. Those are just other terms that people may use in their hashtags, but you can centralize it to that particular shop, or you can search site wide, which is what I really appreciate about those hashtags. Tip number 5 is to save your searches. I do end up saving a lot of authors, especially if they're ones that I'm a big fan of or I'm looking for certain editions. I do utilize this as a buyer and as a seller. So, as a buyer, of course, if I'm looking for certain editions, if I'm looking for certain authors, if I'm looking for certain conditions that the books are in, and whatnot. But as a seller, I also use this as a way to compare listings. So if I have a book that is pretty commonly posted, say that is a big series that's turned into a movie franchise, right? I'm going to be aware that there are a bunch of editions out there. And if I want to sell, I can see what the current listings are and what their conditions are. Number 6, use your wish list. Now, this used to just be called wish list, but now it's under the term shelves, and then within those shelves, you can have various type of lists. I just use it as a wish list right now to watch the price drops or increases of listings that I have my eye on, but you can also create TBR listings if you want to keep track of your favorites, if you want to look out for certain editions as well, you can proceed to do so on your shelves. Tip number 7 is to use Pango threads. I say this because, especially when I first hopped on the app, I was able to find some editions that I had been looking for, such as my Bridgerton series. I believe majority of my step back editions I was able to find on there for reasonable prices. I was also able to find some out of print and first editions of other authors, and I myself was able to sell some listings based on those requests that people put out. So currently there are tabs for Pango threads, such as ISO, which means in search of. There's a sales tab, I believe there's a questions tab, recommendations, and then other various tags that you can search under. This is very helpful as a buyer and as a seller because you can communicate with other users this way. It's similar to how social media platforms do it, where you put out a posting and then it is public. So whoever sees it can reply and help you out, hopefully, to find an edition you have. Or you can go ahead and sell your listings that way with someone who was trying to look for something you have. If you are on Facebook, I would advise joining the Pangobooks users group as well. So that way you can communicate with other users, share your shop, maybe look into other shops as well. but I believe some of the staff members are also within that group. So if you have questions, you can go in there or just use the help center within the app. This brings me to tip number 8, which is give feedback. Whether that be as a buyer that you're giving feedback for a seller, if you want to mention if they communicated well with you or it was well packaged, it was good condition, whatever you want, mention it in feedback. Support is always appreciated. And as someone who used to be in customer service, and in a way I still am, I encourage other people to do so as well because it's always nice to support. Now, tip number 9 kind of goes into this, but be kind when you are communicating. It's a lot easier to get things done when you are being direct yet polite. Some people, you never know, with their tone, it makes people more agitated, and agitation can slow workflow and productivity. So it's best to just communicate clearly and kindly. So this is just a rule of thumb anywhere. I mean, whether you're in the grocery store or if you're shopping online, kindness helps a lot. The last tip I have to share today is to utilize anything that is available to you. So what this means is not only following and gaining followers for your shop or promoting it on social media platforms, but also consider the materials that you're using when you're packing, such as the paper, boxes, mailers that you're using. If you are a buyer, you can save whatever you received it in. If you are a seller, you can take those that you've saved and just repackage it, but in a nice way. You still want it to be neat, but it doesn't necessarily have to be new, just like the books that you're getting, because it can still come in great condition. Those are all the tips that I have to share today. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any of your own tips or have any further questions about Pangobooks. But until next time, my name's Alexis. Take care and happy reading.